Well, hello there. How's it going? My name's Mav, and today we're going to have a conversation. I've gotten a couple of requests to cover this video, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you all. I have, I'll say personally, there's probably a lot of things that I'm still trying to figure out my position on exactly. And I think that's really important to know. Not all trans people have the same opinions about every single issue. There are, there does seem to be some, I don't know, different people who use different evidence for both sides and different things like that. I think sometimes both sides feel like their position is the one that is the most supported by evidence, so to speak. I'm at this place right now. I'm still very curious about all of these things. I'll say that I'm still in the middle of a lot of my own kind of discovery and research about some of these topics. Yeah, I'll use this as a place to talk about some of my opinion on some of these different issues and talk about some of my experiences where it seems relevant. I'll try and also answer the prompts as if I was, invited to this interview. Jubilee, for your next one. Hello, my name is Mav. I'm available. So, all right, let's just dive in, get started. Definitely want to know what your thoughts are, what your opinion is. So I'd also love if you are watching, following along in the comments. Don't be shy. Go ahead and leave your opinions. What would you say for each of the prompts down below? I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas. So we're gonna jump in, get started. I hope that this goes well in terms of I don't know, sound and everything.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
I repeat, gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
I wouldn't step forward for this one. I just don't think that it's necessary to ban things like this. I think that, for example, there are a lot of reasons why puberty blockers are prescribed. Some are gender-related reasons, and there are other reasons why these things are prescribed. I don't necessarily want medical care for all people who use these types of medications to be more difficult. I hope that's not too much of a crazy opinion, but it might be.
Medical transition is no place for a child. I transition as an adult, and I have medical complications. I have mental health issues. Child cannot consent to a medical transition because kids want to eat ice cream every day. It doesn't mean that they should.
I kind of agree with you on that as well, because we have so many rules and regulations when it comes to tobacco or alcohol or any type of drugs. Driving a car, you can't even rent a motel until you're like 25. There's some specific things that we need to put into place that I think would help protect our children, because the minors themselves really don't know who they are until they become 25, 26 years old. Their minds aren't fully developed, and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit.
It's interesting to say that kids don't know who they are until they're 25 or 26. I didn't I didn't know I didn't really kind of understand my gender or anything like that, or my dysphoria until I was about 25 or 26. I wasn't an adult. I was an adult throughout my entire transition, so I don't relate to kind of a lot of the younger people's experiences. And specifically, I'll say that there is, for example, I will say I'm a person who I wasn't given the space to know who I was when I was a child, because I was kind of part of a really cultish type of religious group. And that was very suppressive of very natural occurrences in my body. So it was hard for me to kind of figure out who I was as a person. So that I will agree with. There might be some young children who might not know who they are. If they're in a really oppressive environment, they might deny who they are and therefore not know who they are because they're afraid of being rejected or whatever. But I knew that there were things that I for sure didn't like growing up. I knew that I felt really uncomfortable in a skirt and a dress. I knew that growing up. Did I understand my gender? No, but I know, but that feeling has never changed in my entire life. I still feel uncomfortable in those things. So that has has stayed the same since I was a very young child and is the same now. I think that there are some things that a kid can know when they're a child. I don't think that, for example, just because kids could eat, candy every single day, I probably could have done that every day, doesn't mean that they don't know anything about themselves. Just because, yes, kids make bad decisions, but doesn't mean they don't know themselves at all. Like I said, I think there's a lot of complex stuff here.
So I did transition as a minor. I was a teenager who had a lot of mental health issues and had been sexually exploited and hated my body. And it ended with me
So sad.
kind of finding spaces where that was twisted into, no, you're just a boy in the wrong body. And it ended with me having my first ever medical intervention, being a double mastectomy at 16, before any hormones, before anything else.
I think that's kind of a lot. That's a lot, I would say. Yeah, I don't know, like, obviously I don't know this person's story, but I would definitely say that, like, being a young trans kid, having your first ever medical intervention to be surgery does seem like pretty tricky. I know that surgery was very difficult for me to deal with. The aftermath of surgery took a lot more emotional energy than I had anticipated. So I can't imagine what it would be like to have gone through that as a child. So that's my personal experience. Surgery is really hard. Yeah.
And because of transitioning at such a young age, in the past 6 months, I have watched my body fall apart and waste away in front of me. I have constant joint pain. I've watched my muscle mass waste away. I've watched my vocal cords hurt. I don't know if I'll ever be able to carry a child. The evidence we have suggests that the best way to figure out if gender dysphoria persists into adulthood is to let them grow up. Because a lot of these kids will grow out of it, and many of them will just grow up and end up being gay or gender nonconforming.
Yep.
I don't know. I hear a lot of people who are on the more gender critical side saying things like that, like kids who are gender non-conforming will just grow up to be gay instead of growing up to be a trans or queer or non-binary person, or not queer, trans or non-binary. Those can be the same thing, but also can be different, whatever. And what would I say? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, hold on, let me just review. Oh, best to let them grow up. I don't know, dude. I know for at least for example, are there risks with puberty blockers? It seems like there might be some risks. And there's a person who popped into the comments before he even started who wanted to say that, like, an important thing to know about puberty blockers is they have to work after puberty have to start. So if hormone changes at a stage of puberty, they would, which transgender, we would have to find out, interesting, before the blockers. I think there's still more like research that I have to do on these things to understand more about these things. And for example, like, I know that for trans women, bottom surgery is an important thing, and you might have to like go through more of your puberty in order to kind of like have less complicated surgeries and stuff like that. And it's I'm sure that, like, for a kid who knows exactly who they are, it would be really distressing to watch their body kind of become. And like, for example, I read a comment under this video, and someone said, like, I had to watch my body kind of like become disfigured and go through the wrong puberty. And then now as an adult, having to kind of like fix all of those issues. And I would say that would suck as an adult to kind of be like, I could have made this decision earlier and I would have saved myself a lot of pain and suffering. But because of the way that the laws are and I couldn't have access to gender related care as a minor, then now this is my situation. So I have compassion for that. And I think that people should be allowed to make that decision. Is it complicated? Yes. Can people end up being detransitioners? Yes. Is that a problem? Yeah. I think all of these things can be true at the same time, and we can still let people have hormone gender-related care.
Because a lot of these kids will grow out of it, and many of them will just grow up and end up being gay or gender nonconforming.
Yep.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
I mean, if we're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender affirming care for trans youth. They say it's safe and it's life-saving. And there are numerous studies that back that up.
The study that backs it up for puberty blockers is the Dutch protocol, and the same
I have 10
scientists,
studies that I can bring to you
the
right
same
now.
scientists that brought that up have since rolled.
Just real quick, I know he's made a video about me. I have not watched it yet. I might not watch it ever. I don't know. Yeah, I have emotions about it, and we'll see what happens.
Rolled it back and that it was never supposed to be applied the way it has. The American medical industry, we all know, is money hungry. It's gone off the rails.
I do agree that there are definitely some doctors out there that may be taking advantage of trans people, and I'm sorry that you went through this. Truly, I really am sorry. trans kids are valid, and it's not a decision that they're making.
Right.
It's healthcare.
I want to speak to that real quick. Like, I came out 13 years ago when I was 14, and I knew not that I was trans, but that I was a boy. I had to go through a lengthy process of therapy and seeing an endocrinologist and like go.
That's the thing that I love to hear is like, see this, like he didn't have the language to know that trans was a thing, but he knew who he was. And he was 14, he was a minor, but he knew. And he is another example of, it seems, how this can be useful. Another YouTuber named Sam Collins, who's a trans man also. He made a video response to this video as well, and he transitioned as a minor, and it was good to watch someone who transitioned as a minor watch the video and react and share his feelings as well, because this is important. This is important care. This is medical care for younger people, for younger gender nonconforming people who need the medical care. Not every gender nonconforming person or transgender person will need medical care. I think that's a good thing to share.
Through different tests and exams to make sure that this was real to everyone else involved. Transitioning and being trans was just a process I went through to become who I always knew I was. It wasn't a decision that I made. It was a life or death thing for me. And if I hadn't gotten on hormones and gotten surgery at 16, I don't know if I would be here.
As a father, I have 4 kids. And so, and also as a trans person, I think that knowing what it looked like for me as a child and that experience of going through all of the turmoil and all of the trepidation around my gender identity, I would not put my children in that situation. And also, I don't think that surgeries should be allowed for minors. Like when we look at the data and we look at the statistics and we look at the research, the vast majority of these surgeries are happening to adults. They're not minors. So let's start there, right? And then further than that, if we look at puberty blockers are reversible. So when it comes to children, when we talk about puberty blockers, that gives them a shot, and it gives them autonomy over their bodies. It gives them a space that they can explore their expression. They can explore who they are without surgeries, without all of these other things that could have permanent effects.
I just love seeing a Black man just exist and be a good father, and that makes me feel happy. And yeah, it's really, I would, like I said before, I had surgeries as an adult. That was really tough for me. Really tough. And so I don't know how it would have been difficult to go through as a minor, but I do understand how I feel like some people can feel like it's really important.
My kids were maybe 8 and 10 when I started my transition. And so I talked to them in kid terms. I told my son, I said, look, your mom, dad wants to be a dad because that's how I feel. And my kids being so young, they understood it. They were like, okay, we're with it, And so as they got older, I would bring them into my world and get them to understand the things that maybe I was going through. But now that they're adults, they understand differences in people, not just trans people, but people in general.
So the research is gender fluid. How do you know that this kid is not going to change their gender expression later on? We really actually don't have studies on children that are taken over long term, like over 10 years, 20 years. You've only been on testosterone 14 years. One of the oldest trans men, Buck Angel, he almost died from testosterone. You're saying right now it saved your life? You may
just real quick, yes, Buck Angel almost died because of being on testosterone, because of vaginal atrophy, and that caused a lot of issues in his. I think he had to have an emergency uterectomy. I don't know what it's called. He had what's that surgery called? Anyway, he had his I think his reproductive organs removed in an emergency surgery, and that's scary as hell. And you know what he does now? He doesn't say testosterone is dangerous. I almost died. Nobody take testosterone. He says, no, trans men, make sure that you are getting your vaginas taken care of. I know that that's a triggering word for a lot of people, but making sure that you get your parts taken care of, that you make sure that you acknowledge your biology, and that you make sure that you're getting medical checkups. That's one thing that he does do. I do appreciate that about Buck Angel for sure. How much he tries to make sure that trans men do get the medical care they need, even though that you might feel really dysphoric about your genitals and stuff like that. You still need to make sure you are getting the care that you need. Taking care of vaginal atrophy, those things are really important.
still die from it. You don't know. But you're still
exactly.
You'll die for ideology, and a lot of people have died for an ideology.
It's not an ideology.
It's not an idea. Like
we have more people that are dying
It's
because
an
they're
idea
not
that you're
allowed
born
to
in the wrong
express
body.
themselves. Look at this.
So okay, I have particular opinions about the shapeshifter person who's on YouTube. Just with the language that they use, it seems like they have a very like gender critical ideology. It's just pretty strict gender critical ideology. which I don't necessarily appreciate very much. It's kind of this thing where they're like, the trans people believe that you're like a soul that's born in the wrong body, and that's just an incorrect thing. And I'm like, that's not really the trans experience that people are talking about. I think the whole born in the wrong body situation is like helpful language to describe how it feels. Like, yeah, your body feels wrong, right? You feel like you're born in the wrong body, but no, your body is accurate to like what you are. Your brain is a little bit different. There's probably some neurology differences and stuff that's going on there. Your body is the right way. Your body is the way that it's supposed to be, right? And that's okay. And then we can also acknowledge that and then make changes if we feel comfortable making those changes. I made surgical changes to my body. I feel very happy, very confident with those choices, and very happy that I had the freedom to do that.
Suicide rate of trans masculine folks is at 55%. And one of the factors that could save their lives is support, right? And so if we have folks that are committing suicide because they're not allowed to transition, how do we fix that? If you're telling me the transition for children or minors is something that shouldn't be done.
The first here, I'm very sensitive to this subject, as I've been the person who has had to talk people off the ledge when it comes to suicidality. The discussion around how we talk about suicide is a very dangerous one in this community. You know, my parents were told, do you want a dead daughter or a living son? That's not an appropriate way to talk about that.
And I understand that, but it is our trans masculine youth that are at the highest risk.
I understand that, and they deserve help, but we also need to have a responsible conversation that is not using suicide as a means to push them down a pipeline before they have that comprehensive care.
So I have a question.
So, Maurice, I know you've been wanting to say something.
because I have a big problem.
Really, yeah, I think me too. I also agree. Like, I think that, I don't know, I think it's pretty intense that like that a 16-year-old got their first gender-related thing was surgery. That seems really intense. And I definitely think that I don't know. My opinion could change on this in the future, but I think that like surgery, I think that the first intervention, like, yes, we have transmasculine youth who are feeling really not like wanting to live life, and that's awful and depressing. And I'm going to say they immediately need hormones. Like, no, I will say like the first line of defense is therapy. As a therapist, that is my first recommendation. Get yourself some mental health care, especially for minors. I think that adults, maybe you might be able to just like make your own decisions. I'm not going to force an adult to do stuff like that they don't want to do. But like a minor, yeah, I would agree with kind of making it really important for them to spend a lot of time in therapy before starting medical care. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't think, and I feel like, and if a kid, for example, was like, I'm in a lot of pain being in this body, then they will have the kind of the emotional support to help get them through those difficult times as they're learning how to kind of like just be in their body and exist and kind of wait and understand how, like, to be able to work through all of that emotional discomfort. That's important.
Oh, yeah, no, so I'm not an interrupter. What I'm going to say is we insult children, our youth, so much by taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are.
Exactly.
Like an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do. And it's always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body.
Right. I don't know. See, like, that's the problem. Is like they say, oh, the ideology is that you're born in the wrong body, and you're telling kids that they're born in the wrong body. And I'm not denying that there are people who might be spreading this stuff around. But I don't think that it's right to say, oh, because a kid is going to choose to eat candy for every meal, that they don't have the right to make any of the decisions on their own about who they are.
So I think taking away kids' agency and the right to their own body is it's anti-human.
I have a question. Do you believe minors should be able to get tattoos or plastic surgery or consent to the list of other? I understand they are different things, but to what level do to what?
I think minors can already get tattoos, like with a parent's permission. So I don't know if that's a good argument.
Level do we give children bodily autonomy over everything they do? Because here's the thing, children need barriers in childhood development. You need barriers, and they need a safe way to push against those barriers. And I worry with the current medical system that instead of giving them a safe way to express themselves and push against barriers, we have taken some of those barriers away. And that is why you see more detransitioners, because those barriers have been lifted.
Yeah, they're not just doling out surgeries for children. That's not happening.
And I would also push back on that being the one reason why there are more detransitioners. I won't say that every detransitioner has actually gone through medical care. I would say that might be a false equivalent argument, but I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of what I feel like.
I had a letter from a therapist in a single visit at the gender clinic office.
And that was abuse from that therapist who did not psychoanalyze the rest of your issues.
Right, and that
because your issues weren't being trans. There were a lot of other issues that you were
I have a
addressing right
diagnosis
now.
of gender dysphoria.
And you said you were misdiagnosed.
No, I haven't.
Right.
Yeah, you got to get a second opinion, honey.
And how was how was I supposed to do that when my parents were told
That's
that I
not
would
your
kill
fault.
myself?
But your
Yeah, that's
parents,
my
your
fault.
parents,
Their biggest crime in all this was trusting a medical system that they thought would help me, and the professionals apparently not doing the right thing
I
here.
understand, but your
Yeah,
parents were
absolutely.
responsible for the decisions that were made on your behalf.
I think that what this really highlights is the importance.
I think that's true. This is a bad example about it seems like poor medical care, poor gender related medical care for this person. It's definitely like there are, for example, there are other parents who this happens to, where they trust the medical system with their kids and then the doctors make mistakes. Sometimes they don't have a kid, to tell the story at all. And then the parents have to live with that for the rest of their life. That's a lot. So I'm not gonna to downplay this experience for her. I think that she uses she, her pronouns.
Importance of you sharing your story, because what it shows is that you can't jump into these transitions, and you shouldn't listen to these doctors that push you to transition just because you're feeling a certain way.
Social media brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it, right? Like, yeah, there's this play that they have.
I think it's funny how much they look at each other to see who's gonna go up. I think that's funny.
That it necessarily brainwashes children, but I think there are a lot of people who get into being queer or trans because it's trendy. And I know that's a really controversial statement to make as a trans person, but I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I also find that social media, especially apps like TikTok, give a lot of these kids so much misinformation and lead to people thinking they're trans when there are much deeper issues, and everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young.
I think brainwhash is such a strong
that's a
word
very
to use
aggressive
there.
word.
When it's,
That's why I hesitated to step forward.
And that's why I would step in and actually say it's more so of like a social contagion.
Yeah.
What got me to transition in the first place was
All right, so we're back. I think we just had some technical issues, so we're gonna real quick get back into it. I appreciate you sticking around. Hopefully we can let's just kind of get this back up. I was talking about social contagion. I definitely think that there are definitely youth who go onto TikTok and see a person dancing and they're like, oh my God, that means that I have ADHD. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's the truth. So I would definitely agree that there is misinformation that's being spread that is definitely leading kids to misidentify themselves or kind of maybe misdiagnose themselves or something like that.
social media. It had a grasp on me that there could be something else out in the world for me during that discovery. And I played it to the fullest 100%. I even passed as a female for a good, what was it, 6 years out of the 7 that I was that I transitioned. And later down the road, I went and paid out of pocket and talked to just a regular therapist. And she made me start questioning my own existence in a way, what I can do as a human being, not just as, a male or a female, but what can I contribute to the society? And it made me open up to maybe I was born as a male, and it feels empowering to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavy on social media. Like in my transition Tumblr, that was the place to be for sure. And everyone was talking about their transition from my experience, and everyone was talking about a lot of mental health issues, depression, and all that. And it was kind of being trendy in that sense. Like when TikTok came out, like that was like a whole nother world. And the biggest thing that I found with that is like they weren't saying a lot of the negative things that were happening in their transition. There was always like a positive outlook on it. Like I'm being who I need to be. Like this is great.
Ticket to your happy.
For sure. I will say, like, when I was, so this is one of the reasons why surgery was so hard for me. I also had some complications after surgery. I was in pain for quite a bit longer than what is supposed to, what a person is supposed to be. You really are supposed to only be in pain for a couple of months after surgery, but I was almost a year out and I was still in some significant pain and discomfort. And so I would go on to TikTok and I would see trans masculine people dancing around like shirtless, like top surgery is great and everything's awesome. And I was like real upset and just like frustrated, like this doesn't show like how this can be for people. So I resonate with people who have had complications and like see people promoting the surgeries that kind of cause the complications and being like, can someone please like make this stop? I'm worried. I understand that. And I'll say that top surgery isn't even the most it is a low complication surgery in comparison to any form of bottom surgery. So, which I know like one of these individuals have gotten and now is detransitioning.
Yeah, and I like so much on social media. Like I made a documentary on my transition, and I really went into depth of like a lot of my depression that I dealt with on that, and I didn't find anyone talking about that.
I personally didn't think I was trans till I saw earlier trans YouTubers before I was just gender bending man. And for sure, I also feel like comparing yourself on social media to other people that are more beautiful and successful will create dysphoria of some kind.
Yeah,
some people,
it will affect your self-image for sure.
Because we see all those beautiful trans women that are all dolled up or had every possible plastic surgery they could ever get. You're gonna feel dysphoria. You're gonna be like, I don't look like that.
And that's in general, though. You know what I mean? Whether you're cis or trans, everyone
social
is
media has
dealing
such
with that.
it has such a bad impact on mental health.
I wanted to be that muscular dude, and I wanted to do that. So yeah,
it is such a bad, like well-documented bad impact on people's like sense of self and mental health. And so,
but I also really quickly just want to say, like, I don't want people to think that like social media is turning people trans.
Yeah, we agree with that.
All right.
I agree. I think that's a good point. I also see, hey, Crystal, thanks for stopping by. You have a relative with a trans partner and their 5-year-old child is experimenting with pronouns. You know, like, I think that once again, pronouns, clothing, hairstyles, those are the safest form of transition or even gender experimentation. Those are safe things to explore. Yeah, they can be scary. I would understand a person being scared, especially if you're worried about, especially if you hear what's happening in the media. Everyone's scared of being trans right now. It's a scary thing. So it makes sense that like, you know, the parent is having some fear around that. But I would say like pronouns is just a word. Pretty safe to play around with those things.
Can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, okay, so my thoughts on social media and everyone suddenly looking or being trans. I think whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're just going to go that way. I know plenty of femme twinks who went the muscle queen pipeline. It's not a rare occurrence. And so just experience your life, have fun, try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all fake.
Yeah, I think it is also important to say that like social media is very, very effective. You know, I mean, I personally scroll on TikTok. I'm like, do I have OCD? Do I have autism? Like all these different things. Like it can suck you in. So it's important to be aware of those things.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that I've inspired people to believe that it's okay to be transgender, it's okay to express themselves, and that it's possible to live a happy and successful life.
How do you feel about the fact that some of them are going to regret the body modifications they got and going to have like...
I think that they should go to a doctor that is well-versed in gender care and have the appropriate
I don't like that question. Like, it's a fine question. Any question is a good question to ask, but like, for you to say, like, for example, if someone could ask me, I have a tiny channel, right? But even with the tiny channel I know that there have been people who have reached out to me and have said like, awesome, like I'm about to start hormones or whatever. Like you've inspired me and things like that. So like if those people who said those things to me end up detransitioning, like that is going to be like their choice, right? Like if I, for example, like sued the person that like talked to me or that I kind of discovered non-binary stuff from, like, be like, you told me this thing, therefore it's your fault. Like that's ridiculous in my opinion.
And like analysis done beforehand. That's not
And
my
I feel like a lot of folks are going to social media looking for possibility models. They're looking to see if they're okay. I know for me, when I was very young, looking to see if there were other people like me, because for a long time I thought that I was
the only one.
Exactly.
I thought I was the
Right.
only one.
And so feeling like that, like suicide was a thing for me.
Me too.
Right. And so when I did see a possibility model, when I did see somebody that looked like me, that put me in a space where I was like, I'm
Right,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
Sigh of relief.
Right.
I will say there's also a difference from like showing people that you can have a positive life and then telling them what to do.
Mhm.
So I think you on your channel are kind of like, hey, look what I was able to do and how it's
Mhm.
made me feel, versus like, you should do this because I did this.
Right.
So
And
I
I'm
think,
also, I try my best to be very upfront.
right,
about the
because we
issues
can't help if
that
someone's
you
going to change their mind on something. Like that's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're humans.
And I have to jump on one more thing with that. Like, if I'm watching her channel and it inspires me to transition, I have been watching white straight men be president for years, and I've not wanted to be president once. So I don't identify with that. We're going to talk about brainwashing every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living.
Yeah, like for example, like the whole thing that like social media is transing the youth, for the kids who are seeing cis straight people all over the place. I didn't get cised. I didn't get straighted from all of the straight people I've seen in the media my entire life. Yeah, that it just doesn't make any sense.
Living their life authentically.
People with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery.
I think this is a weird question. I'll say people need both. People with gender dysphoria need both. Wait, no. People with gender dysphoria need therapy first, and they may need surgery. Not all of them will need surgery or even want it after therapy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that one.
And I'll say like really quickly, because this happens for both like people who decide, okay, maybe I'm not trans at all, and people who are trans and who have a lot of body dysphoria and have a certain kind of, they go through some certain processes and they decide like, okay, actually, I might still have this dysphoria or whatever, or discomfort, but I'm not going to get surgery. And that's also great.
We all agree.
I think it's potentially both, though. I think everyone with gender dysphoria needs to go through a therapeutic process and mental health care before they make that choice for themselves.
Exactly.
I personally confuse a lot of my gender dysphoria for body dysmorphia, because no matter how much I feminize my body, till today I still don't feel comfortable in my own body. And now, like looking among like members of trans community, I see that people keep on getting more and more surgeries. The surgeries are no longer affirming. You can just tell that this person is like struggling with body images. I was able to get on estrogen pretty quick.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. Like for example, I'll say that like I said this in the other video with my transition. I'm now at a place where I feel more comfortable with my reflection than I have probably in most of my life. This thing happens, like I'll catch myself in the mirror and like instantly smile. That's not a thing that used to happen for me before. But it didn't, it was a weird little process that happened. It wasn't like the first day I took testosterone, I was like, everything was better. It like kind of took some time. I also have a lot of mental health things that I have to work through.
Quickly when I was 22, and my mental health declined afterwards, and I attributed it to being still in the wrong body, needing more body modification, ended up getting sex reassignment surgery. I do believe that transition was sold to me as a hardware fix, but my mental issues that were not addressed. I still struggle with internalized homophobia that pushed me into transition in the first place. I struggle with borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia. I'm on a spectrum, I'm ADHD, and I have all those issues that were not helped, and I was still struggling with them after transition, and I still do. Overall, after a few years, I came to a conclusion that I was not in the wrong body, that I'm a gender non-conforming man, and I am a feminine man. That's what I am.
And I really love that for him. And I love like he uses he, she, they pronouns. Like I love that you're able to allow yourself to be free and expressive and be the person that you feel comfortable being. And I know that like she does have discomfort with her body now, and I think is looking to try to get some revision surgeries. I've watched other of her content, just that's why I know some other stuff. But also like the idea that people transition because of homophobia, internalized homophobia, that's a thing that she just slipped in there, but I think that needs to be sussed out a little bit more. We need to kind of talk about that. So does that mean that because, you know, I was raised in a homophobic family that like I'm trans because I'm just really secretly homophobic? I think that kind of makes like, maybe that kind of makes sense. Like you feel that, you know, you can't be a man with a man. So if you're a woman, then you'll be with a man with a woman, and that might make you feel better or something like that. But like for me, like it just does, I don't know, it just wouldn't even make sense because like my family, I was both homophobic and transphobic. So like it's like, what would I be running away from? I don't, like I said, everyone has their own thing. I'm not saying that she is saying this is true for other people. person. I'm not sure. Yeah, come.
I have heard a lot of people issue in the body. I think like it's like I think it's the disorder.
Gender is
Right.
you know, gender rules what there is now. Sexual gender when you are transgender and health.
Maybe I'm thinking of that from
Once you are diagnosed with dysphoria, gender dysphoria, the treatment is the social transition, what transition that is going to. Then the first time I can't just get hearing that, but a big reason she said that was she was afraid of what my dad would think. He's always been very, very conservative, very traditional, you could say. He would make comments about trans people, about gay people growing up. So I always knew that he wasn't necessarily accepting. So when it came down to me transitioning, I said to him, I'm going to do this. Either you're going to be the dad that accepts me and supports me through it, or like goodbye. And he chose to support me, and we're closer than ever now.
And I think a lot of us go through medical transitions to easier go through social transition.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
So I know
They
that
become
like,
20.
sorry.
They don't know who they are until they.
Mother crap. Okay, therapy, not surgery. I think we're over here somewhere.
Definitely. And elderly trans people afford for it to be classified as mental
Okay.
illness. So it's
I was
kind of
gonna say I noticed that someone shared that I'm having some audio issues, so I apologize for that. I'm not sure. I think my internet is being weird today, so I apologize for some of those. Hopefully, it's not too bad.
Otherwise, why are you getting the surgeries to?
Because
Because it's for a medical condition.
The dysphoria is a medical condition.
It is, but it's in your head. I would say that you have some kind of mental disorder if you're trying to mimic a stereotype of opposite sex.
It's not a mimic. It's
treatment
aligning.
So like in this language that she keeps using, like you're trying to mimic the opposite sex, like it's very very gender critical language. It frustrates me.
Is to transition.
I have a question though, because I have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. I always have. But I'm still where I am today.
Can I give you my honest opinion? I think that you're probably misdiagnosed.
I don't think I was.
Do you feel dysphoria in your body?
I certainly do now.
Yeah, me too.
I mean,
Because of the
you want
treatment.
to talk about now, but at the time, I genuinely believed I did. I thought it would save me. And then looking back, I realized that my dysphoria stemmed from some severe trauma that was not handled.
Yeah. And I think that this part is, I think a lot of people, I've kind of seen some people say that like they feel frustrated about how Luca was treated in this conversation. Like her opinion wasn't valued, I guess. And you know, I would say like I understand the frustration because it seems like she's kind of like trying to make everybody feel like, I don't know, feel like it's a bad thing that she transitioned as a minor. And I don't know, a lot of people can like use her story like against other trans people who want to transition as minors, which is, you know, which stinks. And I think, yeah, not all of them would want that to happen for sure.
And that's why I think that mental health step is so important. Yeah, because I've heard this from several other, you know, mostly female detransitioners who we had some form of pretty bad trauma that spawned gender dysphoria symptoms.
Yeah.
And we can disagree about misdiagnosis something later, but it felt real at the time for me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that I didn't mean
and no, I know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where that's where the mental health treatment really needs to come in and get to the root of that issue, because oftentimes, specifically with the detransitioners I've talked to, that was ignored. You know, I came out to my.
I think one of the things I really want to say is like, I hate the kind of conflation with trauma and transness, the conflation with trauma and even homosexuality and being gay. It feels like it's a cop out, like just saying like, I'm not saying that like, I'm not discounting her story by any means. Does it happen? Absolutely it happens. That's important. I guess I don't like that it seems to be like, for example, oh, you have gender dysphoria? Oh, well, maybe you just have trauma. Like, I don't like it when that happens. That feels frustrating to me.
My parents in a mental health facility after telling the therapist that I thought I was transgender. And she told me we had to tell your parents so that way you can get the help you need. It led to me seeing a gender therapist who, honestly, the issues I was facing were never addressed. To this day, no one ever addressed the fact that I had severe like trauma and exploitation going on as a young teenager. Instead, I was kind of just affirmed in, you believe this, and instead of even just a little pushback, it led me to the point where the very first medical intervention I ever had was a double mastectomy at 16. A few months after that, I started testosterone because it was the next step of what I was supposed to do.
That's crazy. That is freaking crazy to me, for you to have your first medical intervention be top surgery. For example, I know that there are, let's say, non-binary people who like top surgery is their only medical intervention that they want at all. Like they don't want to be on testosterone at all. They just would like to have a flat chest, and everything else is fine for them. So yeah, I won't say that like, oh, it's never okay to first have top surgery, because that's, you know, that's me gatekeeping other non-binary people's journey, and I don't want to do that. But yeah.
God intended for there to be only two genders.
I hate this question. I don't think that this question was worth. I just don't think it belongs. Why did you have to put God into it? And no.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, so as a Christian, I truly believe that God created male and female, and he created that throughout life, throughout the nature, throughout the wildlife, throughout, you know, Earth itself. And then the arguments come up into the ocean sides of, well, there's these asexual creatures and stuff like that. Well, they were designed that way for a reason, and we humans were not designed to. We were designed to procreate and be able to bring life back to the earth, because we live and we die, we live and we die. It's a rotation of a process of life in itself, and it's its own journey. So I truly do believe that there is male and there is female, but I can respect people's choices. However, that's where I stand on it.
Great. Like I have a lot. I hate religion a lot. Generally, I'm not a big fan of religion that much. I don't like how it influences people's behavior as much as it does. I don't like it that there are a lot of people who will do religion and then suspiciously detransition, or like be an ex-gay after that. I don't know. I don't like that stuff. You're right. Asexual humans also do exist. Like humans who, for example, are born with certain parts and then grow certain parts in later through life. Nothing like the use of the word like designed, like it wasn't designed to be this way, or like the intended purpose of this thing was this. And that's just like illogical thinking. Nothing was like, things just are the way they are. Things really weren't designed. That puts some type of a what you would call a agency to nature, where nature doesn't have any agency.
Well, I'm not Christian, but I do believe there's only two biological sexes, and somehow that's how it's been designed, whether it's by higher power or by evolution.
No, that's not how it is. That is incorrect factually. So just make sure everybody knows that.
I do believe gender expression has been on a spectrum for centuries. So we do have references to people who've been cross-dressing. We have references to eunuchs. And as somebody who went through transition and detransition, when I started taking testosterone, it's almost like reminded me of my original blueprint. And I feel like I went against my original blueprint and I did a lot of damage to it. And I just cannot go back to who I was, because without my testicles, I'm just too far gone in my transition.
Like I feel really sad for her. I feel sad that she feels like she's kind of disconnected from herself in this way. I also am curious about whether or not her ideology about gender contributes to any of her feelings and the way that she kind of talks about this topic, because it really sounds like it is. I could be wrong.
So that's where I'm at.
Can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, you know, we have historically spent more time focusing on and celebrating several genders. There are several different cultures throughout the world.
The two genders thing is such a Western idea also. Like we think that we're so cool because we're from America and we have two genders, whoop-de-doo, but we also are the worst. So
that celebrate the different genders, and to negate the fact that they exist and to negate their validity is just wrong.
There are as many intersex people as there are redheaded people on the planet. I can name 12 people at the top of my head who are born intersex. So to pretend like there's man and woman is just erasing an entire group of people. The God you speak of, the first God that intersex people get to meet, is the doctor, because it's up to their discretion of just what you're going to be when they mutilate their body to be a man or a woman, and that is not fair.
Right.
Right. I think also gender and male and female is not the same thing. Yeah, we're talking about gender, which is like gender identity, the social aspects to being a man or a woman. But male and female dictate sex. So
Well,
body parts.
I disagree with the having sex and gender being two different things. I
Yeah,
believe
that's
them
a
to be one. So I believe that there is they're the same. They're one and the same. They're not different, but we.
Do you hear that? She said, it's a fact. And then he goes, I believe. That is what we're dealing with. That is what we're dealing with, people. It's not logic. It's not logic and reason. It's I believe that gender and sex are the same thing. So then they are, because God, like, And the reason why this makes me so mad is because this is why a lot of this shit is happening. It's because people are making decisions based on their feelings, based on their beliefs, and that's inappropriate.
We have evolutionary problems within humanity, because I also see that there are intersex animals that do exist, and that's how they're born. But I also do believe that the initial design was for man and woman, and then somewhere along the way, viruses, mutations, diseases, plagues, all that type of stuff that we have in the world does play a part back onto.
And sorry, this makes me so furious. So he's basically saying viruses, diseases, plagues. Do you know what that is? All that is the fall. The Christians will use the fall is the reason why all of this bad stuff happens. According to nature, viruses, diseases, plague, like it's just nature. There's no hierarchy. It's just nature. There's no, it's supposed to be this way. It just is.
Onto the world itself, but I believe the initial intent was for God to create Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
God damn. Can someone please get him?
I'm just going to say it.
That's homophobic.
I know it sounds homophobic, and I understand
It is.
It's homophobic.
That's
It's homophobic and made me transition, and that's what you're perpetuating right now. I grew up in a very
What? Help. I need assistance. I need someone to come and assist
homophobic
me.
family, and since I was a kid, I was always brainwashed, said gay is bad. My parents were not happy that I was naturally feminine. They always tried to make me more masculine. They tried to give me to masculine sports. I was mercilessly bullied at school for my femininity, constantly being told that I'm not a real man, that I'm a sissy. And when I came out to my parents as gay, they took me to therapists and tried to do pretty much conversion therapy for me, which failed.
I don't believe in God. I believe in people that exist right now.
Which is kind of interesting because and I'm not saying that she is doing this by any means, but I will say that there are people who do kind of join that gender critical space. They feel compelled to detransition, and they oftentimes will become like anti-trans, which is really unfortunate. But they will pretty much do the same thing that Shapeshifter is saying was so damaging to her, but will use this kind of there's only two genders type of ideology to make trans people feel bad for them being trans.
In front of me, and I believe they should have the right to exist. And so
I'm not saying they don't have the right to exist. I'm
no,
just
but
saying, I'm just saying that
they
was the
weren't
initial
mistakes either. They're just here the way you and I are here right now, and they are who they are, and we have to accept people as
That's it. We're just here.
they are.
Right, and there are biological differences in trans folks. When we look at the brainstem, our brainstems are different. Like that's
Neurologically.
right. Neurologically, we're different.
Yeah,
and
male
so
and female are different. Exactly.
Trans people are different. Yeah, they've found a distinct difference in the
Or what matter.
cortex.
There's no biomarker for trans. Some brain scan of some gay males is identical to female brain, but there is no biomarker for trans. Please don't spread misinformation.
There's science that hints towards it. It's just not confirmed.
No,
Well,
there's research.
So therefore, it falls under the belief that there is, but there's no scientific fact to back that up, which therefore I believe that God's initial intent was to create male
I
and
think
female.
if God intended to, if God exists and in the way that you believe and just intended to make male and female, then
And
we wouldn't be sitting here.
yeah.
I believe
Intersex people would
in a
exist.
higher power, right, of my own,
Mhm.
and God is not this thing that creates.
Like God would be like God is God. Okay, if this God that they're talking about is so real, it's so freaking confusing. Like, why would God intend for things to be one way, but like allow for things to be differently? Like, it just really, when you think about it for more than 3 seconds, it doesn't make any sense.
Rules and binary situations and laws that can be broken or really made. We're just all here. Like I was born in a female body, but I was never a girl. Never, ever, ever. I can't explain why, but that is my truth. That is the fact. That is who I've always been. And there's no way that I'm going to look up at this guy at some guide and be like, oh yeah, you made me as a mistake.
Transitioning improved my sex life.
Yep. And like, I'll say, and shifted it. Like, it didn't, like, improving wasn't the only thing. It also changed it, which wasn't bad, but changes sometimes are challenging to navigate. I'll say that.
Who wants to start?
I could start.
Man, I'm embarrassed.
Not to say my sex life was bad before, but I think transitioning and coming into my body and feeling comfortable in my skin allowed me to open up more and allowed me to not only be better in bed, but also explore what my sexuality looks like.
Yeah.
Agree, 100%. Like I said that after transition, I've finally been able to feel like kind of like I've expanded into my body. Like I was almost like this little thing that was like afraid or something like that. But like after transitioning and also a lot of other emotional work and spiritual work, I've kind of been able to like expand and really kind of like come into myself. And being more in my body means like I get to feel more and I get to be more connected with my body. And and so that has definitely improved my sex life.
Being trans also like made sex really complicated for me too, because I'm a straight guy and I pass very well, and majority of the women that I've been with, I would have to eventually kind of like break it to them that I was trans and deal with a lot of rejection. And with somebody, I would never let girls touch me or see me without clothes on. Not having a penis made me feel inferior as a man. and that no one would want me, which is why I like rejected that part of myself and never even let it be loved. It took a lot of really accepting that people were going to accept me and be attracted to me and love me and want to give me pleasure regardless of what was in my pants. And that took a long time. It took until I was like, I think I was 21.
I love that. I think it's really challenging to be able to like receive love from other people. Dysphoria makes it really hard, can make it really hard to receive love and receive pleasure in different ways. So I'm really glad he's
my ex-girlfriend and I started dating. From that point on, I realized that just letting someone love me was half the battle. And once I let that piece come into play, I mean, it changed my life.
Do you want to go?
Y'all can go last.
I mean, so even though I detransitioned, in the beginning, especially when I was on hormones, like it increased my sex drive a lot. And there were a lot of aspects to that that was like enjoyable to explore my fluidity for sure. I was able to date a lot of people. And I think like from detransitioning, it's like the opposite of that. Like my sex drive completely changed in a way that like there's good aspects to not being horny 24/7. It helps me.
Like a lot of people, like I think this will come up later, but a lot of people will say like it feels, I guess, like feminine to have a lower sex drive in some ways. Like some like people will say that it'll feel kind of like gender affirming to have a higher sex drive. I wonder if other people relate to that.
Me being more comfortable in my body, even with detransitioning, which sounds weird, but like having a trans male body was like so different from the norm. So like I had to accept certain parts of myself. So like even with detransitioning, it helps me accept like.
I'll say the part where he says like trans male bodies are so different from the norm. Like I feel that now, like living in my non-binary body, like when I look at my body, it's like there's not a lot of other bodies that look like this. There are a lot of things that are different and like that I kind of have to like learn how to reckon with when I don't have the opportunity to see examples of it in the media and things like that.
Certain parts of myself that I don't have still.
Absolutely.
I did identify as a gay man before I transitioned, and like those relationships, I feel like I always kind of had like out of body experiences when we were like intimate. And even after I transitioned, before I had bottom surgery, I like just like the anxiety and the dysphoria that I would feel whenever I was intimate or like a partner would try to be intimate with me was just like crippling. So then when I had surgery and I felt more affirmed in my body and everything it feels right to me now, I'm finally able to have those intimate connections with people and form those deeper bonds. So it's really helped me a lot.
I'm so happy for you. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
When I came as trans when I was 18, I moved to Miami, and it wasn't until I got my gender affirming surgeries where I was where I did like lose my virginity because I was just not comfortable doing that. I was like, I'm not presenting in my best light, and I think I could get there.
Yeah, so me, I was like, I'm not fitting the role that I'm supposed to play. In
it felt weird, and you also attract a different type of partner. Back in mind,
I'll say like for sure, like not having the anatomy that you want to have can kind of restrict your partners that you would like to have. Like she's about to talk about kind of
I used to attract
chaser situation
versus someone who was genuinely attracted to the female form, which is someone who I wanted to do. Like that's the role I felt, and so that's where I was comfortable. And now I'm comfortable in Virginia. Like Virginia, the T word did not exist. I was on Jerry Springer and Maury Povich, and that's where that stayed. no one was trans. And so I transitioned when I was about 18. I moved to Miami, and my joke is that I hit the tarmac, and I said, I'm a woman, by the way. I remember I came out to my mom, and I was super nervous because I'd come out as gay years and years before because that was so much easier. But when I came out, I remember my mom just asked if I was happy, if I was healthy, and if I was going to finish school because she'd already paid for it. And I said yes.
I love that. I wish that my parents were that understanding.
Can you disagree, step forward?
Transition definitely ruined my sex life. I was fine with my penis, but a year after estrogen, I felt like that part didn't belong on me anymore. So I went ahead and had sex reassignment surgery.
I definitely can also resonate with the fact of like, as your body changes on hormones, you can feel like dysphoria can increase because like I'll say that like my chest when I was on testosterone, my chest like expanded, I guess, kind of. And so it definitely for me like made the way my old chest look, made it really prominent and like awkward looking to me at least. And felt really uncomfortable and just felt more I guess as my body changed, that part of my body felt more out of place. So I could understand how you could like transition and how that would kind of, add to the feelings of discomfort or incongruence in your body and kind of push you in the direction towards like wanting other surgeries. I could see how that could happen.
After that, my sex drive was gone pretty much. I kept on having complications. I wasn't able to keep my neovagina open despite rigorous dilation. I had multiple revisions, including colon vaginoplasty. I just got some of my sex drive back last year when I started transitioning with testosterone, but it's kind of traumatic to have male sex drive back without my penis. Also, I want to say that sexuality is fluid. My sexuality has definitely changed once I lost my testosterone. Before, I was strictly attracted to men. After I lost my testosterone, I was attracted to people in general because now I didn't have this like male sex drive, so I couldn't relate to men as much. They wanted to have sex, but I just wanted to hold hands and cuddle. And now my body dysmorphia / actual gender dysphoria as well is worse than ever before. I do feel like I'm stuck in a surgically created body. I just don't think I've been really myself by trying.
I'm sure that like having a lot of surgeries and things like that would feel pretty crappy
to become a woman. Yeah. So transition did take a lot from me.
I would
really hard.
imagine.
Yeah. It's okay. Can
I ask you a question? Yeah, sure. if you had like found the results that you desired in the beginning, would you feel differently than you do now?
No, because I realized I just miss being a man. I just miss being obsessed about sex and money. I don't want to do the whole.
Which is so weird to me. Like, I don't know. Like, it's almost like that. And like, I don't want to come at like her at this person. And I'm not really trying to do that. I'm just like, it's just interesting. Like the way, like, and what I'm doing more is I think I'm critiquing her ideology and what it seems like her ideology is stacking up to be. Like, why is it that she thinks that being a man is about being obsessed with sex and money? Like, that feels shallow to me in a way. And also kind of like, for example, like Dylan Mulvaney, who's a trans woman, will make videos like with female stereotypes, and people will like come down her throat being like, oh, you're awful and all of this stuff because you're appropriating womanhood. But that sounds like a little bit of an appropriation of manhood, saying that men are just obsessed with sex and money. I don't know. What do you think?
Emotional thing. And I'm talking about stereotypes, okay? So I regret.
Okay, stereotypes. Okay.
It's like now medical patient for life. Also having sex back, it just reminds me that I lost all these years I could have been having fun, whether it's chasers. I definitely have internalized homophobia. So internalized homophobia also pushed me into transition because I felt like chasers weren't good enough because I wanted to be a woman. I wanted to escape my homosexuality.
Again, with the escaping homosexuality stuff, it's weird. I don't get it.
Now I realize at the end of the day, I'm a gay man and I'm still living with internalized homophobia because therapists actually never helped me with that.
It's fascinating that you say that because I dated men and women, and in my transition, I felt like I had an internalized homophobia when I was with men because I didn't feel like a gay man. And that was really hard for me to like figure out because I had this journey for so long. And a lot of sexual experiences were good, but I was on Grindr and I'm sleeping with these men and they're treating me how I want to be treated in a social setting. But I'm like, I was really, really masculine in my presentation, but I tended to be kind of feminine in my roles within sex. And so I think that also got me to realize that I wanted to detransition because it was a reflection of the relationships that I had. Like, to follow kind of some stereotypes, like I did miss being a woman in some of those like social settings, like with how women interacted with me, with how men interacted with me. Like, so yeah, that's heavily relatable to that for sure. So I do not regret my transition. Shocking.
I love that.
I know. That was like a really great time for me in the beginning. I really was able to explore and express myself in ways that I could not have done without hormones and surgery. I learned so much about how people treat people based on gender and looks in general. I feel like I would not be the person, especially the confidence and security that I have within myself if I didn't transition as presenting as a woman in this world. My dynamic with men in general is so much different. I mean, I was very insecure, very submissive, very quiet. And now I'm able to speak up for myself because of that.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, during my transition, I
definitely would say that hormones and surgery really, there ain't no, like, there are not a lot of other ways to really like get down deep into your psyche than that. That's for sure.
Have a high sex drive from the hormones. And ever since I came back, my sex drive has been higher ever since. And I think it's because I'm no longer on the estrogen. My testosterone levels are increased after I changed back to being who I was originally born as. And it also kind of opened up my eyes to say, maybe I wasn't really a female. This is probably what I would like my future spouse to have, to look upon it. And I'm proud that I actually have that sex drive back again because I felt like I lost it for a long time.
The LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting as they claim.
I would probably say probably not as accepting as they claim. I'll say that there are probably certain groups, and maybe the online LGBT community might be kind of annoying.
Musical chairs?
Yeah. I'm embarrassed to agree. It's true information.
There's still so much transphobia within the LGBT people in the LGBT community that hasn't been addressed yet.
Yeah.
Shoot, there's transphobia within trans people.
Absolutely. When I was transitioning in high school, I searched for acceptance from the cis hetero world. And now I feel like I'm doing the opposite and searching for acceptance from my own community at the time. Like when I was in college, the queer community on my campus.
I agree with her. That's why I made that one video about the offensive tranny. Like, and now, you know what like, guys, I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Like, you know, is this going to be this thing where like we just go back and forth in the community and do exactly what I'm like, this is not what we should be doing. Like, I don't want to be doing this. You know what I mean?
Hated me because I did like heteronormative like guy stuff. I played lacrosse. I was in a frat, but like I wasn't that guy, I guess, that they had in their head. And every time I would go to the LGBT club meetings, I would get like they would stare into my soul. Like I was just this awful thing. And it's always just made me feel invisible and small in whatever space I'm in. And I find that just really disheartening.
And it happens in a lot of other cultures and communities as well too. So
it's funny that
just happens.
You mentioned like the transitioning in high school part and like.
I like that he said that. That's a good input from the Christian guy. Okay. Yeah, this isn't just from the LGBT community. A lot of other communities have this type of a thing as well.
Like that shift from, you know, searching for acceptance outside and then turning around and then having to search for acceptance within the community. Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when, you know, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore until they knew. And then you get that icky feeling of like, you only want me here because of that.
Yeah,
and you know, now I have the D-trans aspect where no community wants me. no one. Like I'm still part of the I'm part of the LGB part, but I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me, and it didn't matter what I was.
Right.
But then all this,
which is really sad. I think that's like really messed up. I don't think that it's okay to do that to detransitioners. I had a friend who was a detransitioner, and they said very similar things, and like that people kind of did, like, yeah, weren't nice as soon as they said that they were detransitioning. So I definitely think that this is a real thing. That
the sudden detransitioning was the thing that I've been called a traitor.
Me too.
You know, it's they don't want me. The rest of the world doesn't want me.
That's not true. That's not true.
You don't have to feel that way.
Yeah, but it feels really
that way.
isolating. Like, this is not a club.
It's not
I
a
know,
club.
and it's not like a personality trait that I'm just taking up, and God forbid one day I change my mind. I won't, but like, or something happens after detrans.
Same, dude. God forbid.
I would hope that the people who stood by my side through everything else would still be there for me because of who I am, period. And not because of an effing label over my head.
And even when I transitioned, I dealt with the traitor to everyone. It was, you know, oh, you want to be a man and the patriarchy. I was like, I get it, but also, yeah. But what I found very interesting was like this divide between trans men and trans women. When I first started doing a lot of advocacy, I was told that just being in the space, that I was taking up too much room, that I was taking up too much space and speak and all of these things. And
that's an interesting thing, just because like you start being like masculine, and that can change your thing. Like I still have a very, like, this causes me dysphoria sometimes, but like I still have a pretty feminine, I feel like, appearance. Like I can even have some short facial hair and will still get kind of like gendered as female. So I don't really deal with a lot of, like, I feel like I don't pass the best, I'll say. I can if I don't talk or if I don't talk and don't move, sometimes I can pass if people are just looking at me. But I haven't had a lot of the experiences of kind of like being treated differently based on kind of my transition as much. Maybe a little bit like being called buddy in public or things like that. But yeah, I definitely agree. So queer, I feel like as an experience in a culture, as well as a gender identity, and detransitioners can be labeled as queer if they want because of their gender experience. I definitely would say that would make a lot of sense.
I was like, wait a minute. But I'm trans too, right? This community also belongs to us too. Right. So that was something that I grappled with for a while.
I hung out with a lot of gay women, and then when I transitioned, I definitely lost my space there, and that was like really hard for me to navigate because being shunned out of these female spaces for me was really hard and difficult. And then when I got to the trans male community, there was a lot of competition. Who looked the best, who passed the best, like that was very difficult. Oh, yeah. Shoot, fortunately I have full beard, so it's like an easy, like, you know what I mean? Like, but still, like, I heavily resonate with trans men still, and definitely resonate with trans women from detransitioning and gender non-conforming people. So it's like, where do I belong?
Weird position to be in because it's like one community.
I feel like I resonate with trans women too in a lot of ways because of, I don't know, like like for example, like sometimes I'll have like my facial hair, like I'll have like a weird relationship with that and feel uncomfortable. Not like a lot of ways by any means, but there are some whispers of that.
Like I said, doesn't really want you, but you don't fit in. You can't really go all the way back, so you don't fit in with the rest of them.
We shouldn't have to categorize. Yeah, like, we should have to flow around, wonder where we belong. Like,
we have like the other detransitioners, but even then, we're all still vastly different individuals who have vastly different life experience, political views, religious beliefs. You know, experience how we right. In some ways, it's empowering because it feels like you're, even though all this happened, you're being seen as an individual for almost the first time. For, you know, spending my high school years being lumped in by both the LGBT community and the rest of the people in a category. But it's also very isolating because you don't have really that community support that other places get.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Wow, that was pretty good. I've watched this before, but I definitely wanted to make sure I hopped on and watched it with all of you. Thank you so much for joining. Man, this was a pretty good, I'll say this was a pretty good interview overall. What did you think about it? How did you feel watching through this? I appreciate you sticking through some of the technical issues I had today. Not sure exactly what's going on, but who knows? Maybe we'll figure that out in the future. Yeah, I have a lot of, I guess, there's a lot of intense emotion that I have around detransition because it's something that is kind of scary and things like that. And maybe I'll talk about that and I'll spend time talking about it in another video. But yeah, this stuff is important to have conversations about. Man, a lot's on my mind. I'll just say really quickly. I had like another YouTuber made a video about me, who I made a video about him first and he made a video back about me. I'm nervous about it. I don't know what I'm going to do with the whole situation. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Someone else can watch it and tell me how it is. Then maybe I'll feel more brave to do it later. Whatever. I appreciate you guys. Hope all is well. Let me know what else you want me to watch and comment on. And we'll talk a little bit more in the future. Peace and love. I will see you next